Trump is in the UK, or as he has to be reminded not to call it, the UK. Paddington Unbearable is in England for an official visit with the royal family. Wait till he finds out tea time has nothing to do with golf. He's going to be very upset. The royals are expected to greet the president and first lady tomorrow, but some clever Brits are already rolling out, well, I wouldn't call it a red carpet exactly, but rather a King Kong-sized photo of Trump with his other side of humanity's coin. We have Donald Trump Jr., who was in court again this morning. There he is. You hear the protesters chanting, crime family, and that is basically what these people are, a crime family, a very dumb crime family, the Gambozos, if you will, and...
The source of the comic gold is the fact that Donald Trump Jr. has dedicated his whole, attempting to emulate his father in adulthood. However, he somehow becomes the imitation, the less expensive version, so weak that it wouldn't make it through a dollar store clearance rack. Then there is the present president, Donald Trump, who stomps around like a bloated monument to his own ego. Jimmy Kimmel is not required to come up with punchlines. All he does is invite us to look for the clowns by pointing to the circus tent.
I hear from one very special friend. Moments after we taped our show last night, the Mad Red Hatter wrote, "I can't believe ABC Fake News gave Jimmy Kimmel his job back." You can't believe they gave me my job back. I can't believe we gave you your job back. Being held responsible for making safety last, but fortunately for him, he's got an ardent defender in one Donald J. Jr.
Pete Buttigieg, you saw in the clip earlier, he's taking some personal time because, 19 days isn't enough time, plus the time he spent chest feeding while we were in the midst of a supply chain crisis and 350 million Americans were depending on him to do his damn job.
Don Jr.'s infatuation with social media is where the devastation begins. In an attempt to appear tough, he broadcasts films that resemble hostage tapes recorded on a calculator, babbling like someone who has just discovered caffeine and is unable to press the off button. Kimmel is having a great time with that since it's more than simply embarrassing. It provides insight into Don Jr.'s intense need for attention. He's the student in the class who waves his hand in response to questions that no one has asked, hoping that if he yells loud enough, his father will finally notice him. The irony is that he becomes more and more like the cheap store Trump, a version without the batteries, the harder he tries.
Don Jr., he's so embarrassing. He's on the stand, he's testifying in this $250 million fraud trial, and he has to compliment. He said his father is an artist with real estate. Yeah, he's an artist. He's Vincent Van Gogh to jail with real estate. Is what he is. He also boasted that his dad is the father of hotel gyms. He said maybe someone put a gym in a building somewhere, but no one did it at the...
Please remember to hit the bell icon and subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying this video. Then there is Trump, the father figure who uses public power as a platform for his own personal drama. Trump is disastrous, whereas Don Jr. is embarrassing, which is why Kimmel's roast is so severe here. With the delicacy of a man attempting to swat a fly with a wrecking ball, he governs, demolishing institutions and boasting about how spectacular the destruction appears on television. A full presidency that plays like awful reality TV is the height of parody. Kimmel doesn't have to make anything up. He merely highlights the ridiculousness of a top executive whose primary preoccupation is his personal image.
Just tell him I'm leaving you and I'm taking our child. He would be stunned. We have a child? Now, I know I'm probably dreaming and Melania isn't going to do any of this, but what if she had someone to do it with?
Kimmel discovers that the father-son dynamic is the comic sweet spot. Don Jr. aspires to be Trump, but what he ultimately produces is Trump-light, a poor mimicry that turns away even his most devoted supporters. His attempts at anger come off as a karaoke performance in which the singer forgets the lyrics but refuses to leave the stage, and his speeches are dripping with sarcastic bluster. Trump, meanwhile, handles him more like an intern than a son, only used for parroting back applauding lines. Family dysfunction is being shown live. Furthermore, a laugh track is not even necessary for Kimmel. It writes itself.
Which, by the way, really put Kinko's to the test, is especially timely because this trip he's taking was planned by the UK ambassador to Washington, a guy named Peter Mandelson, who was fired last week when they found out he wrote one of the letters in the Jeffrey Epstein birthday book, which means Pete will not be there for the visit he planned, which is too bad. He and Trump would have had a lot of gross things to talk about, I'm sure. But
On their own, Don Jr.'s public appearances constitute a comedic sketch. Sweaty and red-faced, he walks between stages, pitching the Trump brand of grievance like a used car salesman trying to sell a lemon. In an attempt to mimic his father's demeanor, he mimics his hand motions, his fake swagger, and his pauses, which are designed to sound meaningful, but really reveal nothing. The melancholy comedy of seeing an adult man cosplay as his father while everyone else laughs at him makes Kimmel laugh out loud. He exudes desperation, the kind that lingers like cheap cologne, rather than strength.
ass kissing in this trial is insane. DJ TJ, of course, denies any and all wrongdoing and is instead going with the "our accountants did it" defense.
I'm not supposed to rely on a big five accounting firm, like one of the biggest accounting firms in the world. I can pay them millions of dollars. I rely on them to do accounting, but I'm supposed to know more than them. By this logic, insurance companies are going to start suing patients for listening to their doctors. Right? Do you understand? Like, am I supposed to know more? Oh, Don Jr. doesn't know anything about it. I'm not an accountant. I'm a business guy.
I'm a business guy who had his elbows soldered together.
Trump, meanwhile, is criticized for transforming each significant issue into an infomercial for himself. When a natural calamity occurs, the president boasts about how many people congratulated him rather than showing sympathy. When a crisis breaks out, he boasts about how unfair it is to him personally rather than taking responsibility. Kimmel takes advantage of this, likening Trump's administration to a never-ending pity party, where the honored guest is constantly whining about himself. Because it's true, the humor works. This president is the first in history to use every catastrophe as a chance to boost his self-esteem. He doesn't make the discussion more interesting. He makes it into a self-parody. Furthermore, although he sees himself as a political heavyweight, in practice, he is more of a warm-up comedian at a sideshow.
They want someone back who does so poorly, who's not funny, and who puts the network in jeopardy by playing 99% positive Democrat garbage. Who puts the network in jeopardy. You hear that? There's the threat again. This time straight from FCC Biscuit's mouth. He goes, he says, I think we're going to test ABC out on this. Let's see how we do. Last time I went after them, they gave me $16 million. This one sounds even more lucrative. A true bunch of losers. Only Donald Trump would try to prove he wasn't threatening ABC by threatening.
Don Jr.'s constant attempts to demonstrate his toughness are also examined by Kimmel. By shouting, pointing, and making fun of critics, he attempts to convey strength, but the result is the opposite. He sounds like a child practicing in front of the mirror, certain that power comes from frowning. The humor speaks for itself. When your greatest claim to relevance is your last name, the tougher you pretend to be, the sillier you look. You can't call Don Jr. a warrior. He serves as a mascot. Kimmel has no trouble bringing that to light. Trump, on the other hand, is criticized for surrounding himself with family members as though the government were merely a continuation of the Trump organization. Kimmel highlights how ridiculous it would be to turn the White House upside down into a family gathering where bloodlines are prioritized over qualifications. As a result, Don Jr. is portrayed as the crown prince awaiting a throne he will never truly occupy, and nepotism masqueraded as government. It's dynastic cosplay, not democracy. And because the entire ruse is so painfully obvious, it's pure comedy in Kimmel's hands.
But there is no accountability. There's not even the expectation of these guys doing their jobs.
And what is your job exactly? I mean, seriously, besides yelling at your laptop, what is it that you do for a living? What do you write on your tax return, son? Donald Trump Jr. is the only guy in America who claims himself as a dependent. Fox News.
The roast delves further into Don Jr.'s media appearances and book releases, where he makes an effort to portray himself as intelligent. It's a delicious irony. A man who bills himself as an author but finds it difficult to put ideas together. Kimmel has a ton of material here, making fun of the fact that each book is more of a ghost-ridden tirade glued together for mass distribution than it is a work of literature. Thought leadership isn't what it is. This is a hardback participation trophy. Trump's financial history is just another gold mine. Kimmel exposes the bankruptcies, lawsuits, and dubious transactions, mocking the notion that Trump is a business whiz. When positioned against Don Jr., who attempts to inherit more than just a fortune, the comedy is more incisive. But the success story, however, failure is what they actually inherited, presented as branding. While the balance sheets reveal a tale of catastrophe, Trump offers the appearance of victory. Kimmel makes fun of this, since there is such a huge disparity between perception and reality that it virtually demands derision. The way Don Jr. tries to win his father's approval is another example of a father-son dynamic in action. Every article, speech, and appearance seems to be an extra tape for Dad's consideration. Kimmel takes advantage of that, emphasizing how Don Jr. is more concerned about becoming irrelevant in the shadow of Trump than he is about losing races. He lives in a society where he defends his father at the start of every sentence and hopes that the focus doesn't change. The audience is laughing for all the wrong reasons during this unscripted performance.
With all the complaining the Trumps do about this trial playing out in the media, you could barely even turn the channel without seeing their lawyer doing an interview with somebody.
What have they been asking the kids? And tell me how they fit into all of this.
They don't fit into all of this. What have they been asking the kids? It's very simple. They'll ask the kids, did you give a value to somebody? Did you do something? And everybody said resoundingly no. And these kids did nothing wrong. They should not be in this case. Ivanka's already out of the case. The boys should not be in the case.
That's right. They're just boys. They're kids. Eric has a book report to.
Trump is criticized for transforming politics into a family business. Kimmel highlights how every legislation prioritizes individual benefit over the general welfare. The Trump name permeates every choice, from lodging to real estate. Kimmel has an inexhaustible supply of fodder as a result of its corruption masquerading as capitalism. Satire isn't inventive when the head of the free world behaves like a walking billboard. It's an observation. Don Jr.'s attempts to be charismatic also fail. His attempts to make jokes, insult people, and agitate the masses often end uncomfortably, like a man fumbling at open mic night. Nor does Trump receive a reprieve. Kimmel reminds us that, for a guy addicted to acclaim, his rallies are more like therapy sessions than political events. He loses the thread, rants, and repeats himself. Supporters applaud as if it were a faded rock star's encore. But Kimmel mocks the ridiculousness of requiring continual approval while in the nation's highest office. Instead of inspiring confidence, Trump encourages late-night comedic monologues.
This morning, Trump warmed up for his date with the British press by yelling at a reporter from Australia who dared to ask about the billions of dollars he's been raking in since the election.
President Trump that a president in office should be engaged in so much business activity.
Well, I'm really not. My kids are running the business. I'm here. You know what the activity, where are you from?
I'm from the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, Paul Cornum program.
Well, the Australians, you're hurting Australia, right? In my opinion, you are hurting Australia very much right now. And they want to get along with me. You know, your leader is coming over to see me very soon. I'm going to tell him about you. You set a very bad tone. Go ahead, John.
What a little tattletale.
Don Jr.'s tendency to parse his father's adversaries is not spared. List. He attacks the same people repeatedly as though it demonstrates their relevance, repeating his grievances like a broken record. Kimmel ridicules its lack of innovation and attacks its predictability. It's imitation, not strategy. He doesn't engage in combat. Like a cover band that no one pays to see, he performs his father's best songs in a terrible way. Trump is ridiculed on the international scene for his odd associations with powerful male leaders. Kimmel highlights how the president alienates allies while swooning over autocratic leaders. It appears that his entire identity is centered on pursuing applause from an echo chamber, that never recognizing how obvious it appears to others. Kimmel attacks its immature aspect, emphasizing that this is playground pranks rather than politics. Furthermore, the joke essentially speaks for itself when national politics are the setting.
Responsible for the other sniveling MAGA turd who has a weird twist on our president's name is Don Jr.
Joe Biden, Joe Biden, Joe Biden. Joe Biden, 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 Joe Biden. Joe Biden, 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 Joe Biden. Joe Biden, 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 Joe Biden has dementia.
That's right. He's the one with the dementia.
Another point of contention is Trump's environmental record. Kimmel makes fun of the lack of foresight to roll back safeguards like a man attempting to get every last penny from the earth before the lights go out. It's policy camouflaged as greed. Don Jr., meanwhile, encourages it while feigning strength when it's really simply irresponsible excess. When they work together, they treat the future as a hassle. Even Don Jr.'s interviews are used as fodder. In an attempt to cover up the void, he overcompensates with volume and haste as he stammers through his responses. Kimmel takes advantage of this and likens it to witnessing someone quickly typing meaningless characters on a malfunctioning keyboard. It does not engender self-assurance. It motivates second-hand humiliation. Trump's legacy is the final nail in the coffin. Kimmel emphasizes that this is a punchline's legacy rather than a statesman's. He will be remembered for his blunders rather than his accomplishments, for his controversies rather than his wisdom. Don Jr. will always be known as the sidekick who stumbled over the shoelaces while attempting to fill his shoes. They do not constitute a dynasty. The two of them are comedians, inadvertent but unforgettable.
He needs to make a decision. You want to be a dictator or just a dick? Because you can't. He also spent some time bragging about his $200 million ballroom again. He said it's going to be the greatest ballroom anywhere in the world. Oh, how exhilarating for all of us. He's so excited for these balls, he can taste them. Trump claims he's going to pay for some of the cost of the ballroom as a gift to us, which, thank you very much. We'll never be in it, but thank you very much. And he's already figured out where to get the money. Trump today became the first president to sue the New York Times. He's suing the New York Times for...
There is no monument to leadership in the rubble that remains. Late-night comedians who hardly have to do any work put together this blooper film. The picture of Trump stumbling through crises as Don Jr. frantically attempts to imitate him is more a warning about how ego destroys legacy than it is a historical account. Every attempt to create grandeur ends in folly, and every attempt to be great simply results in laughter. Their titles evoke images of turmoil and discomfort that are repeatedly presented for viewers who find it hard to believe it was real, rather than images of dignity or inventiveness. Kimmel does a fantastic job at capturing the irony. The Trumps received mockery etched into memory instead of the monuments they had requested. Triumph is not the legacy. Pop culture is ingrained with ridicule. A lasting documentation of what occurs when style attempts to substitute for content. It's more than simply amusement when Kimmel pokes fun at them. They are being mocked in real time by history. Furthermore, the punchlines outspeak the propaganda, regardless of how much spin they attempt to include. The drawback of being a living caricature is that, since you are the comedy, you are unable to avoid it.